The Raven from 1935 was a Universal horror film that starred Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi. And what can I say? I love films from this era. And of course, bringing together Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi together in a film is always going to be awesome. What I liked about this is there's a fair balance of both actors. They really both occupy plenty of screen time. And I really like the interactions between the two of them. It's really a lot of fun. The film opens up with the character Jean, played by Irene Ware, who's driving along. She's in a car accident where she goes off a cliff. She's brought to a hospital where her father appeals to the doctors to help her, but there's nothing they can do. Jean's fiance, Dr. Jerry Holden, played by Lester Matthews, suggests they contact Dr. Richard Vollin, who is played by none other than Bela Lugosi. And we cut to him, and he's busy reciting the Raven poem by Edgar Allan Poe to some guy who is there who's interested in his extensive Poe collection. And as we'll learn, well, this crazy doctor has got quite a lot of Poe stuff going on, good and bad. Well, they come to him to do the surgery. Well, he says that he's retired, but Judge Thatcher, who's played by Samuel Hinds, gets in on this call to appeal to him, and he still refuses. Then just hangs up the phone and goes on to talk to his guests some more about how he has rebuilt Poe's torture devices. Because, that's not weird or anything. Well, Judge Thatcher goes directly to the doctor and talks to him and convinces him to do the surgery. And sure enough, after the surgery, we find that she's totally better again, and Dr. Vollin is there playing Bach on the organ, like creepy people do. And Jean is as good as new and seemingly enamored with the doctor, so thankful to him. She invites him to watch her dance at a theatrical production of Poe's The Raven. It's kind of interesting. It's like The Raven, but set to dance. It was interesting. Anyhow, after, she's visited by the doctor and the judge, and the judge, kind of watching this Dr. Vollin, can see that he's got some sort of eerie interest in his daughter, so he's very suspicious of his affections. Well, he visits the doctor and tells him, hey, keep away from my daughter. She's got a fella already, and he just needs to leave her alone. And he even says, I find you to be stark, staring mad. Enter Boris Karloff as a character Edmund Bateman. He's this escaped criminal with a cool beard. He's got to be bad because, only crazy guys have beards. Well, he goes and meets with Dr. Vollin, and his demand is that this doctor surgically change his face so that, he won't be recognized as a criminal in public. And he agrees, but first you must do something for me, and I love the interactions of these two legends, as the doctor basically tells Bateman that he will do the surgery if Bateman will agree to do a crime for him. So he goes through with the operation. There's a tense scene of unbandaging, and Dr. Vollin, what have you done? Well, this Bateman character sees his face, he freaks out, the scene is great. He's like shooting all these mirrors in the room, and the doctor is just watching and laughing. And I love it because Bateman even does the angry Frankenstein growl. It's just awesome. Well, the doctor taunts Bateman and convinces him to go and kill for him, and then in return he will fix his face up. Because I guess it's very easy to undo facial mutilations or something, but you know what? I don't see this going well for either of them, but let's see what happens. So Dr. Vollin has this big party with guests over, and they're all sitting around watching his horse racing game. It was kind of cool. Bateman is now like a servant, and he's serving everybody as this big disfigured butler. Judge Thatcher arrives, and Vollin apologizes for the earlier comments he made, and Thatcher seems reluctantly okay to forgive him. I think he still thinks he's crazy. Anyhow, the guests seem disturbed at this big, disfigured Bateman guy. So Vollin gathers them all around and makes up this crazy story about how his servant was with him back in the war days, and he was tortured by the enemy who mutilated his face. And while doing so, he references, of course, Edgar Allan Poe. Jean here asks for him to give his interpretation of the Raven, and Vollin says that Poe was a genius who was denied his true love Lenore Foreshadowing. Well, then they all go off to bed. Now, Thatcher comes into Jean's room with Jerry and goes off on how he thinks his Vollin guy is crazy, because he is. Jerry, who is now, she's Jean's fiance, just kind of laughs at it all, but he says he'll switch rooms with Jean for her protection. Going down into his basement dungeon, and it all looks amazing, by the way, Dr. Vollin shows Bateman his instruments of torture, telling him that many are described by Poe in his books. He shows Bateman this elaborate pit and pendulum device he has set up, and he goes through a lot of the details about how it works, and he even lays down on it because, that's not dangerous or anything. Bateman seizes the opportunity, throws the switch, and this doctor is trapped, but he keeps his cool. He reminds Bateman that he's disfigured and he's going to remain that way until he can fix his face for him. So he releases him again. So later, Bateman goes creeping around the house and he tries to sneak into Jean's room. She screams and runs off. Vollin finds out about this and tells Bateman, at gunpoint, to leave her alone, and he even smacks him a few times with a small whip. Well, Bateman follows his instructions and grabs Thatcher to bring him to the torture chamber. Yeah, Bela is just full on nuts here, and it's awesome as he laughs maniacally. All the crazy people need to have a maniacal laugh in films like this. Well, he flips a switch that causes Jean's room to descend like a weird elevator, leading right to his lab. I mean, he's got some crazy mechanical designs going on in this house. Well, Jerry and the others come looking as they hear her scream, and they go looking for some sort of a secret switch in Vollin's office to try to get to her. But the doctor, meanwhile, has thrown some of his magical switches that block the windows and shut off the phones. Man, he's covered all his bases. So Bateman is told to go and quiet down Jean, which he does, but he just ignores her pleas, explaining that his face is a mess from Vollin and that he is the only one that can fix it. I guess that makes sense. Meanwhile, the pendulum is descending closer and closer to Thatcher, who is tied up to the table. And we, the viewer, are left wondering, will Jerry and the others manage to rescue Jean? Can they save Thatcher? Well, you got to go watch this one and see. I'm not going to give any more spoilers. But some closing thoughts. I mean, this was grade A, awesome, universal classic horror goodness from the 1930s. And like I said, I'd love seeing Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff share screen time together like this. It was interesting, too, is that Bela Lugosi seems to be more prominent in this film. I've seen him in some other films where he kind of plays maybe more of a second fiddle to Boris Karloff, but they both seem to be pretty balanced here. So researching the film, TCM mentioned that Karloff, I guess he wasn't too fond of the film. He said at one point, here was an attempt to pile on the thrills without much logic. And that's a fair estimation. I still love the film anyway. And, as I've done a lot of these reviews, I read about this rumored rivalry between these two legends of old horror movies. But yet at the same time, I read in other places that this just isn't the case at all. And TCM even mentioned that Karloff and Lugosi, they became really good friends on the set of The Raven. So that's cool to hear. At this time, this film, I guess, also came under a lot of fire from various censorship boards, that the themes here of sadistic torture went a little bit too far. And in this wild era of the pre-code movies, I guess I could see it. But at the same time, there's virtually no gore. And really the worst part, I'd say, was Karloff's creepy facial prosthetic thing. And that's really it. So anyhow, that's The Raven from 1935. It's an old universal horror classic. It was directed by Louis Friedlander, and it's definitely one worth checking out.